All right, hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. I'm Brian, and with me, as always, is Kathy.
Hey everyone.
So, Kathy, we've been talking a lot about AI lately, and well, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that it's just like everywhere now. But I think, every once in a while, something comes along that feels like a real turning point. Not just an incremental improvement, but a fundamental shift in how we interact with technology and
Right.
what we can actually build.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what we're starting to see with this whole vibe coding thing. It's been popping up everywhere, in tech articles, design blogs, even mainstream news. And it really feels like it could change the game for anyone who wants to create something in the digital world.
Absolutely. It's definitely been one of those topics that just keeps coming up. Like almost every conversation we've had recently about the future of development or design or even just creative work in general seems to circle back to this idea of building with vibes instead of traditional code. It feels like a real paradigm shift, and I think it's worth really taking a deep dive to understand what it's all about, how it works, and what the implications might be for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to unpack this whole vibe coding phenomenon. So, for everyone listening, think of this as your crash course on one of the most talked about trends in tech right now. We're going to break it down into plain English, explain why it's causing so much excitement, and really get into the nitty-gritty of how it actually works and who's using it.
Right, because there's a lot of buzz, but we want to go beyond the hype and really look at the substance, the practical applications, and even the potential challenges that come with this kind of revolutionary approach to building things.
Exactly. So, to kick things off, Kathy, let's just start with the basics. For someone who might be hearing this term for the very first time, what exactly is vibe coding? Like, what's the simplest way to explain it?
Okay, so imagine you're trying to explain to a friend what kind of house you want to build. But instead of drawing detailed blueprints and writing out specific measurements, you just tell them, I want a house that feels warm and inviting. I want a big, open kitchen where everyone can gather. I want it to feel modern but still cozy. That's kind of the essence of vibe coding.
Okay, so instead of getting into all the technical details, you're just conveying the overall feeling and the desired outcome, the vibe, right?
Exactly. And with vibe coding, instead of talking to your friend, you're talking to an AI. You're using natural language, everyday language, to describe what you want to create, whether it's a website, an app, a piece of music, or even a 3D model. And that AI, powered by these massive language models we keep hearing about, is able to take that description, that vibe, and translate it into the underlying code, the design elements, the structure, and the functionality to actually make it real.
Wow, so essentially you're saying that we can now build things with technology just by describing what we want, like we're having a conversation.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's obviously more nuanced than that, but that's the core concept. It's about shifting from this very precise line by line coding based approach to a more intuitive, descriptive, and iterative way of creating.
That's amazing. It really feels like something out of science fiction, you know? Like you just tell the computer what you want and it figures out how to make it happen. But if it's really that simple, why hasn't this been possible before? What's changed?
Well, the biggest game changer has been the incredible advancements in AI, particularly in these large language models, or LLMs. They're basically these incredibly sophisticated algorithms that have been trained on massive amounts of text and code data. And now they're able to understand not just individual words, but also the context, the nuances, the intent behind what we're saying.
So they're not just pattern matching, like some simpler AI systems. They're actually understanding what we mean, the meaning behind our words, the feeling we're trying to evoke, even if we don't explicitly state it.
Exactly. And that's what makes vibe coding possible, because now instead of needing to give the computer precise, step-by-step instructions in a very rigid programming language, you can communicate your vision more abstractly, more creatively, using the language we use every day to communicate with each other.
So it's almost like we're moving closer to this idea of human-computer interaction that feels more natural, more like a collaboration, rather than just a series of commands and responses.
Exactly. It's like we're finally starting to speak the same language. And that's what's so exciting about vibe coding. It's this idea that technology can become a more intuitive and accessible extension of our own creative thinking.
Okay, I get it now. But why the name vibe coding? It sounds a bit, well, vague and unscientific.
Yeah, I know. It's not the most technical term, but I think it actually captures something really important about this approach to building things. Because when you start creating with prompts, when you're using natural language to tell the AI what you want, it's often driven by a feeling and intuition, a general direction you want to go in. You're not necessarily starting with precise specifications. You're starting with a vibe.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like you're setting the mood, the overall aesthetic and feel of what you're trying to create.
Yeah.
And the AI is able to pick up on those subtle cues and translate them into something concrete.
Right. And that's why it's called vibe coding, because it's about capturing and translating that initial feeling, that creative spark, into a tangible outcome.
That's cool. I think that makes a lot of sense. So we've got a good grasp of what vibe coding is, how it's different from traditional coding, and why these advancements in AI are making it possible. But how does it actually work in practice? Like, what are the core principles that underpin this whole approach?
So there are 5 key principles that really define how vibe coding operates. The first one is prompt-centric creation. This means that the prompt, the natural language description you give to the AI, becomes the central element of the entire creation process. It's essentially your code.
So instead of writing lines and lines of traditional code, you're essentially writing sentences that capture your intention.
Exactly. And the second principle is rapid iteration. Because you're interacting with the AI using natural language, the feedback loop becomes much faster and more conversational. You can make a prompt, see what the AI generates, and then refine your prompt based on the output. It's a very fluid and iterative process.
So it's all about experimenting, tweaking, and refining your prompts until you get closer and closer to what you have in mind.
Exactly. And the third principle is multimodal thinking. Vibe coding isn't limited to just text. You can combine text prompts with other types of input like images, code snippets, even audio cues to help the AI better understand your vision.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean,
Yeah.
we think in multiple modalities, right? We don't just think in words. We think in images, sounds, feelings. So it's only natural that we should be able to interact with technology in a similar way.
Exactly. And the fourth principle is imprecise starts, refined ends. This means that you don't need to have a perfectly clear, fully formed idea from the outset. You can start with a general direction, a vibe, and then gradually refine your prompts as the AI generates outputs.
So it's like you're co-creating with the AI, discovering your idea along the way.
Exactly. And the fifth and final principle is perhaps the most powerful one: no barrier to entry. Vibe coding essentially means that anyone who can articulate their thoughts in natural language can potentially create with these tools. You don't need to have years of coding experience.
Wow, that's huge. It really democratizes the whole creative process.
Yeah.
So it's not just for engineers and designers anymore. It's for anyone with an idea, a vision, a vibe they want to bring to life.
Right, and that's what makes vibe coding so exciting. It has the potential to unlock a whole wave of creativity that was previously inaccessible to people who didn't have the technical skills or resources.
I'm starting to get really excited about the possibilities here. But can you give us some concrete examples? Like, how are people actually using vibe coding today? What kind of tools are available?
Sure. So let's start with AI coding assistants. These are tools like GitHub Copilot, Cursor, and Replit Ghostwriter. They basically sit alongside you as you're writing code and offer suggestions, completions, even bug fixes based on your natural language comments or prompts.
So even for people who do know how to code, these AI assistants can really speed up the development process and help them write better code.
Right. Then you have prompt-based app builders. These are platforms that aim to generate entire applications, or at least significant parts of them, based on your natural language descriptions. Examples include tools like Builder.io, Vercel v0, and even combinations of tools like Pinecone, LangChain, and GPT-4 that allow you to build complex, data-driven applications through prompts.
Wow, so you could actually describe what you want the app to do, and the AI will build the underlying structure and logic.
Exactly. And then there are tools focused on design and UI. Tools like Uzard, Galileo AI, and Diagram.com let you generate mockups, user interface components, even entire website layouts just by describing what you envision.
So designers can essentially prototype their ideas much faster and explore many different visual options without having to manually create every single element.
Right. And we're also seeing no-code platforms being enhanced with AI. Platforms like Glide, Zapier, and Notion are integrating AI prompting into their workflows, making it even easier to create things without writing any code.
So it's like they're taking the user-friendliness of no-code platforms and supercharging them with AI to make them even more powerful and flexible.
Exactly. And finally, there are tools for multimedia creation. Platforms like Runway for video generation, 11 Labs for AI-generated voices, and tools like Leonardo AI, Midjourney, and DLE for creating images from text prompts. You can now generate all sorts of multimedia content just by describing what you want.
So essentially, we're seeing this vibe coding approach emerge across the entire creative spectrum. It's impacting how we build software, design interfaces, analyze data, create audio and video content. It's everywhere.
Absolutely. And that's what's so fascinating about it. It's not just a niche technology. It's a fundamental shift in how we're thinking about the creative process and how we interact with technology to bring our ideas to life.
Okay, so we've looked at some examples of the tools, but can you give us some specific scenarios where vibe coding is actually being used today? Like real-world examples?
Sure. So imagine a solo developer who has a brilliant idea for a new sauce application. Instead of spending months learning how to code or hiring a whole development team, they can use tools like ChatGPT and Vercel v0 to generate the initial framework for their app just by describing what they want. They could say something like, build a React app with a landing page, a user login system, and a dashboard for managing tasks. Make the design clean and intuitive, similar to Notion. And within a relatively short time, they could have a functional prototype to start testing their idea.
That's amazing. It really empowers individuals and small teams to get their ideas off the ground much faster.
Right, and think about a UX designer working on a new mobile app. They can use a tool like Galileo AI to quickly mock up different screen lines just by describing the elements and the overall aesthetic they want. They could say something like, design a home screen for a meditation app with calming colors, a prominent start session button, and a space for an inspirational quote. And the AI can instantly generate multiple variations for them to choose from.
So they can rapidly iterate and refine their designs without having to spend hours manually creating mock-ups.
Exactly. And what about a data analyst who needs to extract insights from a database but doesn't know SQL? They can use a BI tool with ChatGPT integration to simply ask for the data they need in plain English. They could say something like, show me the top selling products by region for the last quarter and create a chart that shows sales trends over the past year. And the AI can generate the necessary queries and visualizations without them having to write a single line of code.
That's incredibly empowering for anyone who needs to work with data but doesn't have a technical background.
Absolutely. And even someone who wants to create a simple voice app, like a bedtime story generator, can use tools like 11 Labs and LangChain to create the voice, the story structure, and even add sound effects all through natural language prompts.
It seems like the possibilities are really endless.
Yeah.
So, to sum it all up, what are the key benefits that are driving the adoption of vibe coding? Why should people care about this trend?
I think the biggest benefit is that it democratizes creation. It makes building things with technology accessible to a much wider range of people. It also speeds up the prototyping process significantly, allowing you to test and refine your ideas much faster.
And it reduces the technical overhead, right? So you don't necessarily need to have a big team of engineers to get started.
Exactly. And even for those who do have coding skills, vibe coding can inspire new, more efficient workflows and enhance collaboration by providing a common language that everyone can understand.
Okay, so there are clearly a lot of benefits, but I'm sure there are also challenges and limitations to this approach. What are some of the things we need to be aware of as this technology continues to evolve?
Of course. One of the biggest challenges is ambiguity. Natural language can sometimes be imprecise, and the AI might not always interpret your prompts exactly the way you intended.
So there's still a risk of miscommunication, and the output might not always be perfect.
Right. And debugging can still be difficult. If something goes wrong with the AI-generated output, you might still need someone with traditional coding skills to fix it.
So it's not a magic bullet. It doesn't eliminate the need for technical expertise altogether.
Right. And there's also the issue of non-deterministic outputs. The same prompt given to an AI at different times can sometimes produce slightly different results.
So there's still some unpredictability involved.
Yes. And then there are the broader concerns around security and privacy of AI-generated code, and the ongoing discussions around intellectual property and ownership.
Those are all really important considerations. So as exciting as vibe coding is, we still need to be mindful of the potential downsides and approach it with a balanced perspective.
Absolutely. But I think the potential benefits are too significant to ignore. And with careful planning and awareness of the limitations, vibe coding can truly be a game changer for anyone who wants to create in the digital world.
I totally agree. So for anyone who's listening and feeling inspired to give vibe coding a try, what are some tips or best practices they should keep in mind?
Well, I think the most important thing is to start with clear intents. The more clearly you can describe what you want to achieve, the better the AI will be able to understand your vision.
So don't be afraid to be specific, even if you're starting with a general vibe.
Right. And use examples whenever possible. If you want a website that looks like a particular website, tell the AI. If you want an app that functions like another app, show it to the AI.
So give it as much context as possible.
Exactly. And don't expect to get it perfect on the first try. Embrace the iterative process. Keep refining your prompts based on the AI's output until you get closer to what you have in mind.
And document your process, right? Keep a log of your prompts so you can reuse them later or share them with others.
Exactly. And finally, know when to code. Vibe coding is a powerful tool, but it's not a replacement for all coding. Sometimes you might need to supplement the AI-generated output with some traditional coding to achieve the desired functionality.
So it's all about finding the right balance and knowing when to use the right tool for the job.
Precisely.
Okay, so as we wrap up, what does the future hold for vibe coding? What are some of the trends we might see emerge in the coming years?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things to watch is how the role of prompt engineering will evolve. As more and more people start using these tools, the ability to craft effective prompts will become a valuable skill in itself.
So just like we have software engineers today, we might have prompt engineers in the future.
Exactly. And we might see the emergence of shared prompt libraries and marketplaces where people can share and remix successful prompts.
That would be really cool. It would make it even easier for people to get started and build on each other's work.
And imagine real-time co-building with AI, where you're literally collaborating with an AI assistant as you're building something.
That sounds amazing, like having a super intelligent partner in the creative process.
And I think we'll see more sophisticated multimodal prompting, where you're able to describe your vision using a combination of text, images, voice commands, and even gestures.
So it'll become even more intuitive and natural to interact with technology.
Right. And as this technology matures, I think we'll see more robust regulations and guardrails around AI-generated outputs to ensure security, privacy, and ethical considerations.
Those are all really exciting possibilities. I think vibe coding really has the potential to be a game changer, not just for the tech industry, but for creativity and innovation in general.
I agree. And I think it raises some really profound questions for all of us. Like, how will this change the way we work? How will it impact education and learning? How will it shape the future of creative expression?
Those are some big questions, and I don't think we have all the answers yet, but one thing's for sure, this is just the beginning of something truly transformative.
Right. And for anyone listening, I think the most important thing is to stay curious, explore these new tools, and see what you can create. You might be surprised by what you're capable of.
Absolutely. So for everyone out there who's been wondering what all the buzz around vibe coding is about, hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of this exciting new trend.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are already experimenting with these tools, we'd love to hear about your experiences. And be sure to join us again next Friday evening for another deep dive into the world of AI. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.